On February 20th, 1945, the gritty volcanic ash crunches under Lieutenant Yamada's boots, resembling shattered glass as he gazes out from the narrow concrete opening in Pillbox 247. Dawn's light stretches elongated shadows over Uema's northern area, while dark plumes rise from an object advancing across the sulfur-tainted terrain. Initially, it appears to be yet another U.S. Sherman tank, its olive-green coating and recognizable outline matching the vehicles that have been perishing in the ashen dunes for the last 2 days. Yet, an odd sensation stirs within him. Yamada fine-tunes his binoculars, scrutinizing the nearing machine. Tank 431 advances steadily and warily amid ash piles that engulf soldiers up to their thighs. Within the sturdy concrete structure he contributed to constructing. During the previous year, the officer permits himself a brief surge of assurance. This fortification endures strikes from 16-inch naval shells. Its walls, 4 feet in thickness, are bolstered by metal bars retrieved from forsaken building sites. Gun slits provide overlapping coverage of fire alongside adjacent outposts. Beneath him, passages link to a vast underground complex spanning 11 miles, descending 7 levels, forming a hidden metropolis engineered to exact a torrent of blood for every foot the Americans claim. General Kuribashi's plan unfolds flawlessly. Allow their arrival on shore, permit them to cluster along the coastlines, then exact retribution for each advance with calculated exactitude. A single U.S. fatality per yard captured. 10 enemy losses for every Japanese soldier felled. The equation proves straightforward and merciless. However, as Tank 431 draws within 125 yards, Yamada spots a detail that clenches his gut. The turret swivels toward his location with automated accuracy. Yet in place of the standard 75mm cannon, an altered tube emerges, a spout. The noise reaches him before anything else. Not the booming roar of a tank's ordnance or the rapid bursts of automatic fire, but an unfamiliar sound. A sharp release of pressurized gas, like air bursting free under immense force. Then arrives the vision that will torment his nights for the ensuing 4 decades. A gush of incendiary fluid bursts forth from the U.S. vehicle, soaring across the Pacific dawn, akin to streams of infernal flame. The jet extends an astonishing distance, 150 yards of napalm-enriched devastation, etching a fiery path over the rugged ground. It slams into the concrete slit of the adjacent pillbox with lethal precision, seeping via the gun port and surging inward like flowing magma, drawn to the deepest points. The cries endure mere moments. Yamada's field phone buzzes with frantic updates from sites throughout the zone. Unusual U.S. tanks, an unfamiliar element, they're incinerating our defenses. His fingers tremble while grasping the handset, observing acrid fumes billowing from strongholds deemed unassailable. Aboard Tank 431, Staff Sergeant Robert Misa's command pierces the rumble of the motor. Gunner, swing right 30 degrees. Following objective, pillbox, open fire. Who could have foreseen that 8 covertly altered Sherman tanks, assembled by Navy Seabees laboring 20 hours daily in Hawaiian depots, were on the verge of reshaping combat eternally? Who might have anticipated armaments that converted Japan's prime bulwark, their subterranean bastions, into ovens of death? 5 months prior, the tale originated in a secure facility at Schofield Barracks, Hawaii, where the clamor of arc welders permeated the humid atmosphere around the clock for 20 hours. Machinist's mate, First Class A. Riker swipes perspiration from his face, smearing oil across his skin as he inspects the CBH-1 flamethrower apparatus forming within the turret of Sherman Tank 431. The very one destined to strike dread into Lieutenant Yamada. "This isn't merely crafting an instrument of war," Riker remarks to his colleague, electrician's mate Second Class Joseph Kyle, amid showers of flying embers. "It's devising a means to preserve the lives of our Marines. Each stronghold this device scorches spares our troops from assaulting it at fatal cost. The pair of Seabees have dwelled alongside their tools, resting in rotations spurred by accounts from Peleliu and Saipan, sites where thousands of Marines perished in futile charges against entrenched sites impervious to shelling. The figures are basic, yet devastating. Handheld flamethrower users suffer a 70% fatality rate. Certain squads forfeit 92% of their operators. Young men burdened with 70-pound fuel containers creeping toward reinforced concrete at distances where enemy gunners discern their features clearly. Colonel George F. strides amid the 8 emerging tanks in the storage building. Every adaptation demands 200 labor hours and 150 custom-fabricated components. At age 64, backed by 44 years in uniform, he grasps that victories stem from ingenuity as much as valor. His CBH-1 apparatus merges superior features from British, US, and sees German flamethrower models into a groundbreaking creation. An implement capable of hurling napalm-thickened propellant 150 yards with the precision of a flamethrower mounted on a tank barrel. Pressure reaching 300 pounds per square inch. He informs a Marine officer from the visiting group that's 3 times the force of earlier models. The fuel blend ignites at 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit. Most importantly, its turret can swivel across 270 degrees and adjust elevation from 10 degrees up to 135 degrees using the tank's standard targeting mechanisms. Yet the true breakthrough lies in its mental impact. These vehicles resemble standard Sherman tanks right up until they unleash their assault. No distinctive signs, nothing hinting at their horrific role. From the perspective of foes watching, they seem utterly normal until the attack hits. Meanwhile, some 8,000 meters distant, General Tadamichi Kurabayashi positions himself inside the command post under Hill 382, poring over charts etched with exact defensive figures. All paths of entry have been gauged meticulously, each lethal sector plotted for artillery observers. His 21,000 troops devoted the whole of 1944 to excavating a subterranean network from the rugged lava stone. 1,500 hardened outposts linked by passages spacious enough to house full battalions. "Do not perish until you've taken out 10 Americans," declare his fixed directives. Troops must hold their ground until overwhelmed, then battle on using grenades, bayonets, and ultimately fists alone. The commander's calculations possess a ruthless sophistication. 21,000 fighters, each claiming 10 U.S. lives, yield 210,000 adversary deaths, exceeding the full size of the invading army. The U.S. forces might seize Iwo Jima, yet the toll would prove so devastating they'd scrap intentions to assault Japan's mainland. Japanese scouts have dissected every U.S. armament. They're aware of handheld flamethrowers, hazardous for users, short-ranged, susceptible to focused rifle fire. Specialized drills stress countermeasures against flamethrowers, zero in on the prominent dual canisters, charge forward amid the device's brief effective distance, capitalize on the handler's exposure during refills. However, all defensive strategies presume flamethrowers wielded by foot soldiers. The idea of vehicle-mounted versions, tanks advancing toward bunkers shielded by their plating, launching precise fiery barrages from extraordinary distances, has never entered their strategies. Private Takahashi Toshiharu hunkers down in a foxhole close to Mount Suribachi's foot, a 20-kiloed explosive fastened across his shoulders. At age 31, this specialist from Kochi Prefecture has stepped up for the deadliest assignment: sneak into foe tank lines under darkness and blow himself up against U.S. vehicles. He's penned his last note to family, expressing regret to his spouse and kids for failing to come back. "There's no supply of water, no rounds left, no chance for survival," he murmurs to his 7 squad mates, each burdened with matching bombs. "We're heading to our end honorably." Yet, Takahashi's preparation targets ordinary tanks. His field guide details Sherman plating depth, vulnerabilities in the suspension, hidden angles allowing a resolute infantryman to close in unseen. No part of his doctrine addresses vehicles spewing molten destruction over 150 yards, armaments that convert protective strongholds into death traps. Staff Sergeant Robert Misa glances at his timepiece while Tank 431 hums quietly along Iwo Jima's dark shorelines. Nearby, the 8M4 A3R3 flamethrowing units blend seamlessly with ordinary Shermans, their lethal capability concealed until activation. His team includes Driver Private James Morrison, Assistant Driver Private Robert Chen, Loader Corporal Anthony Vitelli, and Gunner Corporal Thomas Carlson. "You've all endured months of focused drills on gear unproven in battle. Misa reminds them via the radio link. Our edge is total shock. We mimic any typical Sherman until the shot rings out. Once it does, the whole island's artillery will zero in on us. Peering through his viewer, he witnesses Marines falling in droves, struggling to push ahead versus concealed enemy strongpoints. Traditional methods are crumbling disastrously. Shipboard barrages fail to breach shelters sunk beneath 10 feet of lava. Cannon rounds burst pointlessly on sites built to endure strikes from capital ship armaments. Day one's losses mount horrifically. 2,120 Marines dead or injured for barely 700 yards advanced. Imagine if a handful of tanks could shift the tide entirely. Precisely at 14:20 hours on February 20th, 1945, the roar destined to reverberate across warfare annals shatters the stony hush of Iwo Jima's north flank. Within Tank 4-31, Staff Sergeant Misa's command slices the motor's rumble with crisp authority. "Gunner, engage Flamethrower! Target that bunker! Fire!" Corporal Thomas Carlson squeezes the control, and the CBH-1 mechanism unleashes a roar that survivors would label the Inferno's own roar. Nitrogen under 300 pounds per square inch surges a jet of gelled petroleum in a flawless trajectory across the dawn sky. The blazing fluid slams the bunker slit with unerring force. Surging inside, the gun liquid fire pours into the gun port, surging through the interior like scorching magma, infiltrating every nook and cranny. From his vantage point 200 yards distant, Lieutenant Yamada observes the scene in frozen terror. Within the adjacent bunker, heat levels spike beyond 500 degrees F almost instantly. The blaze devours oxygen at such a furious pace that Japanese troops choke to death prior to the inferno even touching them. Survivors of the opening explosion try to escape via back doors, merely to find that the fiery liquid has seeped in via air vents, transforming their well-built stronghold into an oven of death. "My God," murmurs Private Morrison, operator of the tank, while piercing cries slice the dawn stillness, fleeting horrific noises that fade nearly as swiftly as they start, yet there's no opportunity for contemplation. Japanese anti-tank artillery has spotted the danger, and a 40mm round slams into the front plating of Tank 401, echoing like the mightiest blacksmith strike on an immense anvil. The vehicle jolts, metal clashing against metal, yet the projectile glances off toward the heavens. The Sherman's plating withstands the blow. "Turn right 30 degrees, directs Meza, his tone calm amid the turmoil unfolding nearby. "Skox, keep the flames going non-stop." Carlson unleashes yet another stream, sustaining the blaze for 15 excruciating seconds before thick, dark fumes pour from each opening in the stronghold. Amid the haze and acrid stench, they spot Japanese fighters bursting from their spots, not in any coordinated withdrawal, but in sheer desperate rout, a sight no U.S. soldier has seen over 3 years of fighting in the Pacific. "They're fleeing," relays Chen from his spot manning the forward machine gun, incredulity evident in his words. "They're truly bolting." Communications buzz wildly across Marine channels as updates pour in from the whole line. Flame tanks in action, Japanese defenses crushed, foes vacating strongholds sans direct engagement. Tank 434, aiding the 23rd Marines by the East Boat Basin, employs what its crew chief, Sergeant William Patterson, dubs corkscrew and scorch maneuvers, circling in to dodge anti-tank shots while delivering unrelenting fire streams. Over the course of one afternoon, it neutralizes 4 hardened sites that had halted a full battalion's push for 48 hours. However, it's Tank 432's display close to Mount Suribachi that uncovers the device's profound mental toll. Patterson instructs his operator to halt 100 yards from a network of linked caverns where scores of Japanese defenders peer out from the shadows. Via his scope, he glimpses their gazes gleaming like those of beasts pinned in bright lights. He releases a brief jet of fire upward, away from targets, purely as a warning of potential doom. The reaction proves immediate and revolutionary. Japanese troops start pouring out from hidden exits at the back, deserting posts they were commanded to hold until slain. These are fighters who endured the Sino-Japanese War, drilled since youth to embrace demise over disgrace as the sole honorable path. Still, they bolt at the prospect of perishing in flames. Marine infantrymen, placed to seize just such a chance, are caught off guard and momentarily forget to shoot at the withdrawing adversaries. Within 30 minutes, a whole defensive zone crumbles, all without the tank launching any direct strikes at foes. Private Takahashi Toshiharu, hunkered in his foxhole with the explosive device bound to his torso, eyes Tank 437 nearing his spot. His field guide has drilled him for precisely this scenario. Hold until the vehicle draws within 10 meters, then charge ahead with the demolitions. Basic calculus: one Japanese sacrifice for one U.S. armored loss. But as the Sherman nears 50 meters, an unthinkable event unfolds. The barrel pivots toward a shelter 80 yards to Takahashi's left, and a torrent of ignited fuel bursts forth from the spot of the primary cannon. The napalm gush curves airborne like a blazing waterway, hitting the shelter and seeping into all crevices. The ensuing wails differ from anything he's known, not the swift end from rounds or fragments, but the drawn-out torment of comrades roasting alive inside their bastion. The foe got flushed out by a flamethrower, he records later in his diary. The blaze was shadowy with dense smoke. Visibility dropped to zero since that initial tank was finished. The adversaries must have been furious. Now the next tank bears down on our group, blasting with its main gun and spraying bullets from the machine gun. Terrifying. Tank 437 advances to 30 meters. Near enough for Takahashi to make out the commander's scope sweeping side to side, hunting for threats. This marks his instant, the range his doctrine outlined for an effective kamikaze assault. Yet, just as he steels himself to leap from cover, the turret rotates a full 180 degrees and unleashes hell straight rearward, engulfing a group of Japanese attackers launching their own desperate rush. The shift in battlefield dynamics reaches its peak, in contrast to standard tanks limited to frontal barrages. With the CBH-1's complete rotational range, it can now target enemies from every angle. What was meant to be a gun with restricted firing arcs has turned into a ring of devastation encircling the vehicle. Takahashi stays motionless in his foxhole as the tank rolls directly above him, its 35-ton mass packing down the volcanic soil around his shelter. He senses the ground shaking from the Sherman's treads, the growl of its motor, and the clanking of a contraption that has forever altered the rules of combat. Wonders and oddities exist in this world, he jots down. It's astonishing that I'm recording these observations amid such chaos. By dusk on February 20th, the figures paint a picture that would forever alter Marine Corps strategy. 8 tanks wipe out 47 bunkers in a single day. In zones backed by flamethrowers, Marine losses drop 40% compared to the day before. They push forward 600 yards across land that had stalled for 48 hours, yet the deepest impact is on morale. For the first time in Japan's long military tradition, large groups of troops are fleeing their posts instead of fighting to the end. From his hidden command post under Hill 382, General Kuribashi gets updates that demolish his precise plans for defense. Bunkers built to withstand weeks of assault crumble within hours. The supposed unbreakable subterranean network now serves as a fatal maze, with blazing fuel surging through air vents and passages like lava hunting for depressions. That evening, his urgent directives label flame tanks as the top priority for every 47mm anti-tank gun at hand. He assembles elite attack squads, volunteers rigged with bombs on their persons. But the core challenge proves impossible to solve. The incendiary Shermans resemble standard ones until they unleash their payload, at which point it's far too late. At an intel station by the shore, Corporal James Martinez, the radio specialist, intercepts desperate signals in fragmented cipher from the Japanese side. An unbeatable new U.S. device. Flaming liquid spreads like a flood. Our defenses turn into ovens. The decoded messages match the grim scenes Marine leaders are observing up close. Centuries-honed Japanese tactics for holding ground are unraveling against a tool devised by Navy engineers toiling around the clock in a concealed Hawaiian facility. Tank 431, its plating pocked with new craters and scorch traces from close calls, sits idle beside a wrecked Japanese outpost while Sergeant Mesa assesses the changed landscape. Haze drifts from over a dozen sites that appeared invincible at dawn. Following the flame tanks, Marine foot soldiers press on over terrain that had claimed hundreds of lives mere hours earlier. We simply carried out our duty, Messa would recount to his grandson years down the line. Those vehicles spared countless Marines. That's the part I hold on to. 4 decades after that fateful February dawn, a pair of elderly veterans meet on Iwo Jima's dark lava beach, the spot where Tank 431 unleashed its initial barrage. Robert Mesa, once a staff sergeant and now 73 with unsteady grip, confronts Koshi Yamada, the ex-lieutenant who watched that inaugural flame assault from his fortified shelter. "For 40 years I despised you," Yamada conveys via translator, his words faint against the ocean gusts. "Those flame tanks ended my comrades in horrors I can't erase, but I've come to see it clearly. Conflict turns everyone into beasts. You acted as necessity demanded, just as we did." Mesa replies plainly, "We were merely young lads fighting to endure. I'm relieved we've both survived to share this ground." The old fighters clasp each other as Mount Suribachi looms in the background, the craggy summit where Marines hoisted the flag on the very day Tank 431 introduced this revolutionary tactic. Their coming to terms goes beyond individual closure. It recognizes the seismic shift wrought by 8 altered Sherman tanks in the annals of war. The numbers still impress even today. Over 36 days of fighting, those 8 flamethrower units burned through 360,000 gallons of thickened napalm, obliterating more than 1,000 strongpoints and likely preventing 5,000 U.S. deaths. They shattered the stalemate that might have dragged into a prolonged blockade, showing how ingenuity can triumph over the fiercest zeal. Still, the human toll lingered for all who took part. Crews inside the tank spoke of deep mental scars from their part in what onlookers called mass cremation on a factory scale. Corporal Thomas Carlson, who pulled the trigger on that opening blast as the gunner, shared in testimony much later. The cries echoed when the fire struck. They didn't last, but they pierced. Even now, in the dark hours, those sounds return. We fulfilled our obligation, yet the odor haunts me still, seared skin blended with the brimstone tang of the island's stones. The Rev. The impact of that breakthrough reached well beyond the shores of Iwo Jima. Right away, the Marine Corps sought 54 more flamethrower tanks to deploy in upcoming campaigns. At Schofield Barracks, Colonel George Ohm's group, operating under AAA priority, the identical classification given to the Manhattan Project, crafted the enhanced CBH-2 variant. Come June 1945, 70 upgraded flame tanks stood prepared for Operation Downfall, the anticipated assault on Japan. What started as a hasty battlefield fix evolved into essential gear across the Pacific theater. In the thick of the Okinawa fight, Army flame tanks burned through 200,000 gallons of fuel blend, showing just as much prowess against Japanese bunker networks. The inventors behind these contraptions, machinist Mate Riker and electricians Mate Kyla, faded back into ordinary lives post-war. Their contributions faded into obscurity, tucked away in forgotten tech documents. Still, their ingenuity spared countless American soldiers. General Kurobashi's parting evaluation, sent moments before his demise in late March 1945, rang with uncanny foresight. The Americans didn't just overpower us through greater forces or raw power, they outmaneuvered us via unmatched creativity, flipping our biggest asset, those subterranean defenses, into fatal snares. Tomorrow's battles will favor countries that dream up fresh combat methods, not ones polishing outdated strategies. That insight still resonates in modern defense strategies as tech advances keep toppling age-old approaches. From smart guided bombs to digital assaults, the core idea endures. Ingenuity prevails against routine. Flexibility topples rigidity. Nowadays, Tank 434, the lone remnant of the initial 8 flame units, rests at the National Museum of the Marine Corps in Quantico, Virginia. Its battered plating whispers tales of lava fields and explosive strikes, marking a device that reshaped combat for good. The modest inscription lists specs and combat record, yet it fails to capture the hiss of pressurized nitrogen bursting free, the blaze of gelled fuel streaking across dawn skies, or the shift of hidden strongholds into infernos. Many veterans linger most at this display, a few offering salutes, others lost in quiet reflection. Kids pose their tough queries. How could someone build something so awful? The response isn't about celebrating violence, but acknowledging the grim demands of conflict and the bravery of youthful operators who handled these beasts to protect their comrades. The final gathering of Iwo Jima flame tank survivors occurred in 2015, with just 3 aging crewmen in their 90s showing up. They met at the museum, swapping stories with eager archivists, racing to record those direct experiences before they vanished. The era of the foot soldier closed amid fire on a fiery Pacific atoll. The dawn of high-tech combat rose, its reverberations felt in every clash where fresh ideas collide with dire need, and the blend of U.S. manufacturing muscle and frontline urgency turns the unattainable into destiny.